Okay, I'd just like to invite you all to this afternoon's afternoon tea with the APPG Health and Wellbeing Panel meeting of our formal APPG meetings that are open to the public. So thank you, it's lovely to see everybody. I'm Jacqueline Winstanley, I'm the founder and CEO of Universal Inclusion, and I'm in a privileged position to be providing the secretariat for the APPG, supported by Savitas, and we have Helen Martin G representing Savitas with us this afternoon. I'm just going to go through a few housekeeping rules before I introduce you to our chair. So could I please just say to everybody, if you remember that this is a recorded session, we don't go out live, so if there's anything that you do say and you'd like to be removed afterwards, please just contact us and we'll do that. The only thing that we do share is the panel that we will be taking forward later, and we change that into a podcast. So please, we'd like you to feel very comfortable and very open without fear of actually what you might say being quoted or misquoted. Thank you. Could we ask you please to stay muted throughout the session unless you're invited by the chair to speak? We'd really like it if you could use the chat function to pose any questions that you have. And if we don't get to them today, we will answer them afterwards. And please put in the chat function who you are, share a picture today of your afternoon tea, put your Twitter handle in, and also please note our Twitter handle, which is the @APPG_IE. Any questions at all or any comments you'd like to make, please feel free to do that. We do have live captioning available for the session. Thank you. And at that point, I'd like to introduce now to our APPG chair, Dr. Lisa Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and thank you to everybody who's in attendance again today for our first all-party parliamentary group for inclusive entrepreneurship of 2021. It's great to be here again speaking with everybody, and we've actually found having meetings via Zoom has meant increased participation right across the United Kingdom, so that's been a real benefit in terms of inclusion within our own group. Online has definitely helped. So I think when we move back to being able to have meetings in the House of Commons, we'll be meeting with the Speaker to try to ensure that the APPGs can also have a forum for online inclusion and representation in the meeting at the same time, because that would really meet with our aims in terms of inclusive entrepreneurship, but also in terms of inclusion in Parliament, which I think is extremely essential. So thank you to everyone for attending. We're going to have an excellent panel session and afternoon tea. I'm afraid I brought a Coca-Cola with me, but I might also have a tea. And I see that one of the panelists also has a Coke too. So whichever you wish to have that makes you feel comfortable, and please feel that you can contribute. We have Q&A following from the panel discussion, and we really want as many people as possible to be contributing. It's a very innovative APPG, and it's about changing the narrative in Parliament, in policy and beyond. It's about making sure that when we speak about entrepreneurship, people with protected characteristics and from minority and backgrounds such as having maybe a disability are all able to achieve their full potential, and that the APPG works and strives with members of the public, with parliamentarians in both houses and with business to make sure that policies developed to overcome the challenges that are currently faced and to make sure that we have a fully inclusive economy. So I'm going to hand over to Jacqueline again to lead us into the panel discussion and run up to that. But I'll be with you for the majority of the session, and as I say, enjoy your afternoon tea, and thank you once again for engaging with the Inclusive Entrepreneurship APPG.
Thank you, Dr. Cameron. Okay, so obviously you've met our chair, Dr. Lisa Cameron, but just to introduce you to some of our vice chairs, so the Right Honourable Baroness Tanni Gray-Thompson, Right Honourable Dale Errol, the Right Honourable the Baroness Udin, Craig Tracy MP and Yasmin Qureshi MP. I'm not sure, as I say, I can't see everybody on screen, so it may be that they are with us today, but they certainly send their support if they've not been able to make it. Okay, so we just wanted to go through again just to reaffirm the overview of the concept of inclusive entrepreneurship. So people often ask about this and what is it that as an APPG we're actually looking at when we speak in this way. So when we're talking about inclusive entrepreneurship, we're looking at enterprise created by people who have protected characteristics and those who support inclusive economic growth. It's innovative and it contributes to the economy, the GDP, the disability strategy, and the Sustainable Development Goals. A real and sustainable alternative to intergenerational poverty. That's quite a tongue twister. And it improves mental health and well-being. So that is where we're coming from. So what we wanted to do is show with you, again, when people ask us, well, what sort of businesses are people creating? What sort of people are inclusive entrepreneurs? And as members of the APPG grow, we're putting together a showcase that shows you, introduces you to some of the people and the businesses that they run. Thank you very much. So what we'd like to do now is just go through, and we will do this every session, because I think it's really important to reinforce, and we do this through a show reel, the sort of businesses that are created in this sector. Thank you. So hopefully that gives you an idea. The sector as it's developing, we're seeing a range of businesses right across industries, and we're seeing sole traders, community interest companies, limited companies, etc. And it's really interesting to see how this sector is taking shape. But please, if you're not already part of our APPG and on our show reel, please sign up and we'd be delighted to showcase what you're doing as well. Thank you so much. Each session we do a formal update just to keep people up to date with our 2-year programme and I suppose really, considering we started just before recess, the things that are taking shape and the successes we've had to date. So what you can do, there's a link there to go on the APPG page where you'll see the full 2-year work programme. What I'm going to do today is just give you an update on each aspect of that. So we will be launching our call for evidence in January 2021 and reporting back in June 2021. That's a wide-ranging inquiry. We're trying to find out very much what is this sector comprised of? What are people doing? What support do they currently access? What are they going to need going forward? And so on. Can I please say I'm going to have to do this now, and I do apologise. These are the joys of Zoom. I do have an emergency plumber in my house at the moment, and he's doing his best to keep quiet. So I really am sorry if you do hear some rather strange noises. I think that's the most difficult thing I've ever had to deal with on Zoom so far. The parcels and everything I'm pretty familiar with, but this is a new one. Anyway, so apologies for that in advance. So in terms of our parliamentary questions that we will be helping to submit to Parliament, we're really pleased that one of those questions that was put forward, and it's very much about the experiences that you're sharing, your lived experiences are helping to inform how this sector can be supported going forward. And we're really pleased that one of those parliamentary questions did result in particularly an action with the Access to Work Award. A lot of people who are in receipt of that award were concerned that they might have to meet the criteria of an annual turnover, which would have been very difficult as we were in the pandemic. And we were pleased to find that that's actually been waived. So in terms of what this group can do, you know, we're not lobbyists, but very much it's your experience and information that helps government to understand what support is required so that a response can be made in an appropriate manner. We were also very fortunate that an early day motion was accepted, and those of you that took part in the I suppose it was our very first launch of the recognition awards with the APPG, that was accepted and is actually recorded now in Hansard. And that's something really special, I think, that we've actually taken forward. Our podcast from our last meeting and our panel will be released shortly. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be an Apple podcast. And in terms of organising events with schools, university students and emerging entrepreneurs, the Task and Finish group will convene in June 2021. We have a meeting scheduled with Justin Tomlinson, the Minister for Disabled People. Again, very much to sort of share what the group is doing, what the sector is experiencing, and recommendations from, again, your lived experience. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so in terms of parliamentary debates, we're hoping that we can actually influence the parliamentary debate in the first quarter, looking at inclusive entrepreneurship. In terms of the Inclusive Entrepreneurship Accelerator programme, please have a look at the link to the APPG page on further information about that, and the people that have already come forward and the companies that have come forward to offer support, and will be quite heavily involved in that programme going forward. In terms of upscaling the Inclusive Entrepreneur Network, again, please sign up to the APPG. We'd love to showcase what you're all doing. The recognition programme I referred to earlier, which we had in November 2020, was a great success, even though it was virtual. I think it was enjoyed by everybody and really did showcase, I think, and importantly for this group, the businesses that people were running, their business achievements. And I think that was quite refreshing. We got a lot of comments about that. It was really nice to see people being recognised, not necessarily for the protected characteristic that they have, but actually the businesses that they're running. The Stock Exchange are going to host an event, and the date will be agreed, and we'll keep you up to date with that. And again, in terms of sponsors and events going forward, please keep an eye on our APPG page and also our social media. I did have a think actually, because there's so much to get across to everybody. We might even consider, and I'm not sure about the parliamentary protocols, but whether we have, because we have a LinkedIn page, we have a Facebook page, we have the Twitter feed, but whether we might need another method of communication. And I'm not sure whether WhatsApp might be appropriate. I'm not sure how that will work, and that's maybe something we can talk about going forward, because I think some of the feedback from today, even though, you know, we've tried all those methods of communication, I think sometimes people didn't get the information that they needed in time. So we'll think about that going forward. So that's the update. Please do have a look at the website, and if you have any questions, put them in the chat, or you can address them to Dr. Cameron. Thank you very much. So how can you get involved? This is very much, and I like this, this is a task and finish action group. So the 2-year programme is a very ambitious programme, And what we're asking of people is, please become a member. Invest and contribute your expertise to the meetings that we have and the various initiatives organised by the Secretariat. Sponsor key elements of our work, such as enquiries and research. Sponsor the Secretariat. Consider sponsoring an award, a meeting, an event or initiatives which complement the work programme. Pay it forward. And this is really when we eventually get, please, to come out to play again, so to speak, that we are back in Westminster. And for people that may not be able to afford to attend events in Westminster, that people who are able to do that might consider paying it forward and enabling somebody else to attend. Sponsor a digital platform to support inclusive entrepreneurship in the UK. That's a wide-ranging plea, but what is really important, no matter what you're able to contribute, however small or however large, it will be greatly appreciated. It's very much as I say to people, we can't do this without you. This is a collaboration, and it's through collaboration that we'll move things forward. Okay, this is the exciting part, and we're going to try to get to the panels quicker in the meetings because we want to hear about you. We want you to hear what are the things that we're looking at and hear from experts and people that are experiencing this themselves, and then have an opportunity to ask questions. So as we move on to the afternoon tea with the APPG Health and Wellbeing panel. So this is a really exciting panel, I think, and probably really appropriate at the moment for two reasons, actually. Because our chair, Dr. Cameron, has been speaking in the House today about this very thing. I don't know whether you want to say a little bit about that, Lisa, before we do start.
Well, it was just the reforms to the Mental Health Care and Treatment Act today. So we were looking very much at why it's so important that the individual is placed at the centre of their care and treatment, and they have increased decision making, that it's the least restricted environment, which would ultimately be the community that people have their care provided within, and some changes so that people with learning disabilities and autism who have maybe been detained in hospital as a result of having a disability or a developmental disorder, that will now no longer be grounds for detention in itself. So many more individualised rights coming forward, and really the Act coming up to date with the century that we're in, and making sure that people have autonomy and have the ability to shape their treatment and care, which I think is really crucial. We've also been speaking about mental health during the pandemic and looking at resourcing of mental health. We know we had an update this morning actually from the Mental Health Minister to say that those with pre-existing mental health issues have really been adversely affected during the pandemic, and also young women, and there's also an increase in alcohol consumption, not tea as we're doing today, but alcohol consumption. But we can see the stressors, and perhaps that people are using more maladaptive coping strategies to deal with isolation, etc. And also the other massive issue that's come through is around about 30% of frontline staffing in the ICUs at risk of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So mental health is going to be a long-term outcome of this pandemic, and we really need to not only update the Mental Health Act, but also look at increased provision and access to services for those who need it, both in terms of people in the community, in hospital, but also those frontline staff and in the workplace too. So I think it's really apt to be speaking about this issue today.
So obviously, yes. And in addition to which, being in lockdown again, I think possibly, certainly what we're getting back from the sector is this lockdown that we're currently in, people are finding it much more difficult than the first lockdown. So I think it's rather timely that we're doing this today. So as we introduce our health and wellbeing panel with our afternoon tea, we are going to introduce you to 3 speakers, and I will introduce them as we come to them. I'm not going to take time now. I'd just like to say a little bit to put this in context. So one of the key things that our sector say has benefited them is business support, which incorporates how to navigate a health condition as an entrepreneur. And equally, they say it's been the hardest thing to find. The pandemic has added a further dimension to this, and our sector, myself included, have struggled and are still struggling to find balance amongst the business disruption and the impact of the virus itself. In the panel, we're going to hear from industry experts and entrepreneurs about their own experiences, why they feel it's important to consider health and well-being in any element of business support, and how they think government and policymakers and what they can do to support the sector in this regard going forward. We'll also, at the end of our hearing from our first 2 speakers, we'll be hearing from Emma Kenny, who's going to present to you something that she's developed, a project which hopefully will help people in respect of health and well-being going forward. So the first person I would like to introduce you to is David Walsh. David is the founder and managing partner of Flamefinch, and he's also the entrepreneur in residence at King's College Accelerator Programme. And what I'm going to ask each of our speakers is literally, in terms of health and well-being, so to introduce yourself, to talk a little bit about your thoughts on this. How important is health and well-being to you? Why you feel it's important in respect of inclusive entrepreneurship, and also your thoughts on how government and policymakers can support the sector in this regard going forward. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. And I don't know how your dry January is going, but mine's not going so well recently. Jacqueline and I were speaking just after I was mentoring the startups at King's College this week, and all the young startups are all experiencing a lot of anxiety with this latest lockdown. Actually, it's quite interesting. So I just want to say, it's okay to feel anxious, and it's okay to feel it's a struggle sometimes, because it's not it's a difficult time. And I think with entrepreneurship in particular, it does test your resilience and really puts a lot of more things under stress. Okay. My background is that I started a software business back in the 90s, and eventually sold it after it became a large public company around 2016. And there's nothing that I haven't experienced that hasn't given me stress, to be honest with you. It was I've had recessions, internet boom and bust. I've had managing directors creating fictitious employees. I've had scandals happening in the workplace. I've had clients trying to take my business down. I've had clients not paying their bills. Okay, I got divorced. What else? And I think that what I would say is that throughout the process, one of the things I found quite difficult to get my head around is how I reacted to stress and my health and well-being. It's quite it's such an obvious question, but it's sometimes, I think you actually touched on this when you were talking about Emma, actually, Jacqueline. You were saying that navigating your way through how you can really understand yourself when you're under these conditions of growing a business and so on. It's difficult, and it's also made more difficult because when you start a business, you're very often on your own, aren't you? You're kind of trying to. I always think it's a bit like I'm a scientist, so I always think it's a bit like entropy, in that the universe is always trying to take energy away from us, and what you're trying to do as an entrepreneur is to create something that's quite new, and you're trying to reverse that flow of energy, and you're trying to put a lot of your own energy into actually making and create something of value and something special. Okay, something that is possibly unique, okay, and never been done before. So you're doing it on your own, you're under stress, and you know, entrepreneurship is a real test of resilience. And I tried lots of things to try and work out how to deal and keep myself healthy. You have to be so disciplined. You know, it's very easy to have props such as a glass of wine or a bottle of wine or whatever it is, okay. But you know, you've really got to exercise well, you've got to sleep well, you've got to keep your positivity about you, because obviously people are looking at you not just as an entrepreneur but as a leader, okay. And as a leader, whether you're in front of a client or you're in front of your employees, okay, you've got to be on the money, okay. So I think it can be very crushing being an entrepreneur and a leader, especially in difficult moments, okay. And I think the health and well-being aspect is really, really critical. In the end, for me, I worked out that, you know, a little bit of outdoor exercise, if you like, and some meditation and a bit of yoga, it kind of did it for me, okay. And I managed to, I could carry those things with me wherever I was in the world, on a plane traveling to America or Europe. I could just drop into those things. I didn't have to have special equipment or anything, okay. And I think technology is also helping now in that respect, okay. And just to finish off, I mean, you've asked about government policy and advice, and I must admit, I find this really difficult to answer this question, Jacqueline. So thanks for asking it, okay. But I think that for me, it seems to me that, I mean, I've worked with a lot of accelerators, and I think a lot of health and well-being and support comes from having a network of people around you. And one thing that does worry me a little bit is when I look at the accelerators out there, I don't see a lot of inclusiveness. You know, I see gender balance, you know, and I see, you know, ethnicity balances, but I don't necessarily see in these accelerators, you know, like the examples you showed at the outset, Jacqueline, some fantastic entrepreneurs and personalities, which I think would enrich, you know, a lot of these networks. And so I don't think we should necessarily be creating something that's just about inclusive entrepreneurship in that respect. I think we should be trying to get all these other networks and institutions to open their doors more and make it more inclusive, you know, and actually have that broader network of expertise and experience, and if you like-minded individuals being able to share their experience and share their tips about, you know, being healthy but also growing a business, okay. And I don't know what the policy thing is in there, but it seems to me something to do with you know, creating a benchmark or standards that makes things more inclusive, okay, that builds it more into the fabric of what we would expect to see day to day, you know, and making it just a normal thing, you know. I think that's really important. But I have to say, I'm still thinking about the question, Jacqueline, so my apologies. Is that okay? Yeah.
That's perfect, David. Thank you very much. And this is the thing, isn't it? These are questions to be posed because this is what we're trying to create. And you're absolutely right. And we're really conscious that we're not seen as a segregated group. That's why this is really broad, and in our definition, people that want to support us, collaborate with us. And we do know that by the very nature of what we're doing, we will influence the rest of the sector broadly. So I think that's a really good point. Thank you. Now, because I do have this background noise, I'm going to try to speak as little as possible, and I will go on mute between the speakers. Normally, I like to have a little bit more interaction with the speakers, but I don't want to spoil your experience with the sewing and different things that keeps going on to my left. Okay, so thank you, David. We'll come back to you at the end with the Q&A, but really, really good points there. Thank you, especially about the yoga. I like that one. I'd now like to introduce you to Aaron Hornback, and I've posed the same questions to Aaron, but I will just go through them again. So again, if you could tell people a little bit about yourself, why you feel health and well-being is so important to inclusive entrepreneurship, and your thoughts on how government and policymakers can support the sector going forward. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you everyone for this time together to discuss health and well-being for the APPG and for inclusive entrepreneurs. For myself, so I come from across the pond. I've been in the UK now, coming just to 19 years. So I'm more of I identify more with elves than with my heritage back home. But for myself, I started a journey coming up to about 10 years ago, where I was severely out of shape. Mentally, I was not well, emotionally not well, and I was trying to keep it all together, and yet I was cracking at the seams. And so myself, I began a journey that started with a prayer, because I'm also a minister, a pastor, personal trainer, and life coach, because those two things kind of go together. But for myself, my own journey was hearing the doctor say to me, I need to do something about my health, my physical health, in order to bring things right in my life. And so that journey began. And one thing that I've noticed in my journey is that there are 7 areas of health and well-being that impact. So obviously it's the physical, so keeping yourself fit, in shape. Then you've got your mental and emotional, spiritual. Then it goes into things that are outside of you. So your social health, your occupational health, and even your economic health or financial well-being. All these things have an impact on you. And so I set up Horizon Health Network because I noticed in myself the need to be well, and the desire to help others become well. So I've worked with people that have, for example, I had a client who was struggling with alcoholism due to just all the things going in life. And I'm not saying it's just because of me, but the time that I spent with this particular client, she's no longer an alcoholic. She's, I guess what you call a recovering alcoholic. I work with a client right now who is wheelchair bound, encouraging her and strengthening her muscles to be able to walk again. Fortunately, she's in a position where she has that potential. I work with people that have been on the brink of suicide. And what I found, what's important when it comes to health and well-being for people in this industry, so I'm more of a support to people that need that extra support, is I give focus. But not only that, I'm a friend, even though I'm still in a professional role. You've got someone that you can go to, that if things are going out of whack, as you're training, as you're being focused, as whatever aspect of health and well-being you need, you've got somebody who has a listening ear. I've been through a lot of things. A couple of years ago, I was in the height of running an event center and overseeing the worship of a very large church. I'm based in Manchester, and I was on the brink of burnout, and I didn't realize it, but I was. So I understand that the challenges that people face when you're trying to do everything and keep everything going. But to have somebody to step in and say, "Hey, I see you. I want to help you. Let's get focused." It gives takes that pressure off, and enables each individual in a tailored way become well. I've also noticed that in the gym settings, gyms are not accessible as well as they should be. And so coming to the question of with policies and things of that nature, I think maybe some things to look at is when it comes into the health and well-being industry. Some people, they're scared to enter into a gym. I know I was, but how much more if you have characteristics that give you a bit more anxiety about something like that, or you may not have equipment that is easily accessible for you given the condition that you face. So one of the thoughts I've had is to maybe have an initiative, maybe a financial initiative grant for health centers to make the gym setting more accessible, so that when someone does come in, they're not thinking, I can't get up these stairs, or I don't have something that I can do properly for cardio, all those different things, or how do I get to the weights, all those different things, to make them accessible to each person. But also understanding that there are people who are in the profession who can actually tailor something to an individual and help them to get through that process. So looking at how do we fund that? Does that go into a package for the individual? And just looking at all the different aspects to how can we make sure that each person has the same opportunity to receive the help and support to become well in their life, even as an entrepreneur, with all the pressures that we all face.
Thank you so much, Erin. That's a really interesting overview. And I think, as you say, some of perhaps the usual things that people might be accessing at this time that would help them to navigate their health and well-being, people are having to look at doing this different ways, actually. And it has been interesting to see how many people have actually set up virtual opportunities where they were providing them in a formal environment that people would travel to. A lot more things online that people can actually interact with at the moment. I know myself, ironically, doing yoga, which I would never have thought of doing prior to the pandemic, but getting a site which does very gentle yoga has been really, really beneficial for me, to the point that sometimes if I don't do it now, I do feel a little bit down for not doing it. So it must be doing something. It must be doing something. Thank you so much for sharing that, Erin. That was really interesting insights from you. Thank you. What I'd like to do now is, obviously, having listened to those two examples, and we will hear from other members of our sector later on in the session, but what I'd like to do now is introduce you to Emma Kenny. And you may or may not know Emma. You've probably perhaps seen her if you watch breakfast TV sometimes. So Emma is a media psychologist, broadcaster and writer. And what she's going to talk to you about today is what we've seen so far seems to be a really wonderful concept. And I won't spoil it for you. I'm going to ask Emma to take over now, say a little bit about herself, and then introduce her new concept to you. Thank you, Emma. We will be screen sharing, so we will need a little bit of a to-ing and fro-ing, so please be patient whilst we do that. Thank you.
Yeah, if you'd let me know when you can see my screen, if you can see my screen.
I'll share it.
I'll just share it now. Hiya, everybody. By the way, I've loved listening to both those speakers and everything that was said in between. It made a lot of sense to me because I decided about 10 years ago, no, it's more now, I hate to say it, it's 14 years ago, I became a single mum, and my husband left me for a friend. So I went from having two very small infant children to suddenly not having a social network, not being able to run 6 miles a day, which I'd done forever, being absolutely broke. And I worked part-time running a mental health service, which was a lovely job, but didn't really bring a lot of money in because I've always been quite vocational. And during that experience, I decided that I needed to think about my health and fitness, but I didn't have any money to feed my children a plant-based diet, which is what we are. And I also didn't know how I was going to look after my physical health. So I went and bought the Davina DVD, and literally 3 weeks later wanted to kill Davina. No disrespect, Davina. But when you constantly listen to somebody's voice and you're doing the same thing, it was really frustrating. And then as well, it was £13. And I can still remember at that point, that was a huge amount of money for me. And I sat there one day and I thought, what do I need? What would change this? And I decided that if I ever got the chance, I'd create it. So listening to David talk about the entrepreneurial journey, and actually when I think about speaking to Jacqueline about this as well, one of the big problems that you have is that in our society, it's an ableist society. If you're left-handed, it's a struggle enough. So what I wanted to create was an inclusive app that was completely free. I didn't ever want a single mum to be in a situation like I had been, or a single dad, or a depressed 55-year-old man, and so on and so forth. I wanted to be able to create something that anybody could have any point in time and would benefit from the 4 pillars of health, fitness, well-being and nutrition. And I've self-funded it, which has meant that I've done it over a period of time, which has been hard. But I didn't want to firstly get turned away by a million different funders, which happens. David would absolutely validate that. And I didn't want to have to explain why I didn't want to charge a premium rate subscription-wise for the content. And I didn't want to have to achieve goals that other people set for me at a detriment to what I believed was important for the credibility of the app and the inclusivity of the app. So APPGIE is the brainchild of a single broke mum suffering from really bad anxiety and not knowing how to move forward and feeling like she didn't have any community around her. So every single aspect of this app has been built with her in mind, and also with all the different focus group people that, again, very kindly volunteered their time, because everything has been done by me with a development agency, but over a period of time so that I could afford it. And now I'm at the point where I've just quietly launched it. And so I really empathize with any entrepreneur's journey. I also empathize with the fact that you're told a very monolithic tale about how to do things. And I'm also evidence that sometimes you don't have to listen to that journey. And the thing about being a creative entrepreneur is that that's what makes you an entrepreneur. And also, just to validate what was said before about the idea of what's missing in entrepreneurship. What's missing in entrepreneurship is the real diversity, which means people like me from a working class background and people like you who may be dealing with a disability that other people can see or not see, that has other issues within your life that makes other people see you in a different way, which is what we know happens all the time. People are judgmental. So I've been there, done it, lived it, I'm still living it. And it's an imperfect science, but I'll show you a little bit about APPGIE. So anybody can use it. When you first go on, if you just go onto the news feed, when you first go on, you'll be asked a series of questions, and that's somebody putting up their own content there, Altamuna. So basically, people can upload their own information. They'll have been asked a series of questions. It could be, whether you're depressed. It could be whether you want to know about low mobility. It could be to do with depression and anxiety. It could be to do with wanting to feed healthier meals to your family on a budget. Very, very orientated towards conserving money. And once you've gone on there, you'll basically, as you've just been taken through, you'll get your news feed. That news feed will be for you. So it might be that you've looked at, this is coming up, budget fitness. It might be that you're going to get some motivational things. It might be that you'd be doing a workout because you've got a particular area that you like kettlebells or yoga. Hundreds and hundreds of yoga videos. If you wanted to go onto the section, which is our explore section, you can kind of then minimize the way that you're going to use it. So everybody will use it differently, but every piece of content you can chat on. And if you go onto a piece of nutrition advice, so there's about 5,000 recipes and meal plans on here, everything from gluten-free right through to raw. It's just going across so you can kind of see the breadth of it. Quick and simple budget. We take you through every single thing because a lot of people said that they don't know how to cook. So if I go on something like a recipe, go for a recipe, Pete. We have meal plans that can take you up to 28 days, or budget orientated for under £40 a week for a family of 2. If you just give it me, I'll do it whilst I'm here. My clever assistant's just looking confused at me. So I'll go on quick and simple. That's a good example. Just really easy recipes. That's a dietitian, all done by experts. So they're all NHS experts. Just takes you through everything so that hopefully at the end, after you've completed it, you can say, I like it, or you can save it to a bookmark to go back to your profile later on, or you can make a little comment, chat to other people. So that would be how the recipes, meal plans, etc. work. The well-being, it might be that you want to know about mindful practice or confidence building. Maybe you've got an issue with pregnancy, you want hypnobirthing, then meditation programs. And the same with fitness. You have an amazing opportunity with fitness to kind of do any type of fitness, whether it's Pilates, yoga, whether it's to do with problems with your mobility, so chair exercise. We have quite a lot of limited mobility things because We want people to feel that if you have problems because you are not mobile, you can still make the most of your fitness journey. And all of their advice is done and framed by experts within their field, whether that's clinical psychologists, whether that's doctors and nurses, or whether that's the clinical dietitians that are all at the high grade of their levels. And also we have people who have children, there's specific dietitians for children as well. So it's a really inclusive app. On top of that is a social network, because what I lacked most was just people consciously understanding that I felt really alone. And you can talk on any piece of content, you can upload your own content. So there's a little upload button where you can put your own videos on. So I was listening to what all of you were talking about, and essentially you can have a community within a community, if that makes sense. And I'm hoping that it will mean that for the first time in the UK, there is a completely free, accessible and holistic mental, physical, nutritional and wellness app. And also, as it grows, it's a really safe place and a safe space to increase your health and wellness whilst also feeling that you have the supportive community around it. We don't sell data, and we also make sure that if anybody is trolled, there is a deletion, and the block blocks their IP as well, which means that it makes it a bit more difficult for people to re-register if they're a troll. My core belief is that if there's one thing that we need more than ever in the UK at the moment, it's a place where people can go for their sanity and serenity without necessarily feeling judged. And literally, APPGIE can take you through a program which will be from very beginning of your fitness journey, wherever you are, all the way through to, warrior workouts, if that's what you want. Or if you're more like me, I just like cooking and looking at healthier menus and being able to kind of share my experiences, and you can do that here. I guess it's nice meeting all of you because you're part of the community that I want to build, and also because I think that mental health is not necessarily seen as a disability a lot, but for me, I'm obsessed with it because I don't think there's very much, unless you have your mental health and wellness. Certainly in my most challenging physical times, my mental health has been a big part of how I've healed. But in my most challenging mental health issue times, I found it really, really difficult to manage anything, let alone my physical well-being. Everything gets stopped. So that's my actual app. It's huge, obviously. There's people chatting. I've launched it really quietly. I'm now starting my pitching. I'm now just about to do that. It's kind of the bit that I hate because I don't really like asking for money. And also, I don't, like any business, like the kicks in the teeth that you're going to get constantly, particularly when you're trying to balance something beautiful for people with making money for investors, if that makes sense. But all of you will be feeling that as well. But like I said, hopefully it will be a place where people like yourselves can come and enjoy that experience without being charged money, but also build your experience. So start having contact with other people, create your own communities within it. It's not going live, as in it is live and you can get it, but it's not going properly to a point where I'll be pushing it for about another month and a half, because we've done some research and people are desperate to leave Facebook and want to be able to talk to each other on their profiles. So we've just got to build that in at the moment. So I'm having to beg, borrow and steal, so to speak, to make that happen. But it's been a journey of resilience. And like I said, anybody can use it, and we'd welcome you to. And just to say about what could the government do, when I think about that question that you asked the other panel members, just to throw my tiny bit of information that I feel is important. I think to really want to do something about mental health, it's really important to step into the world where somebody has any mental health issues, not just from the point of, let's say, an ableist position where somebody looks like they're well, but actually has horrible issues like anxiety and depression, right through to people who have more limiting issues, like they're wheelchair bound, or they have issues with mobility, and then that's impacting on their mental health and so on and so forth. I think that what you really need is to have a willingness to create a bridge, which I think you're doing, where people listen to the true stories. I don't think that necessarily the even mental health minister really connects with that journey. And I think the more that we have those more open conversations and dialogue about how challenging mental health can be and how disabling it can be, the more we create a compassionate society, which I think right now is more than ever. So yeah, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Emma. I've had some brilliant feedback actually in the chat. Now, I'm mindful Dr. Cameron needs to leave. She has another meeting, I believe, straight after this one. So what I don't want to do, there's been some really great discussion. There's a lot of information in the chat. Now, I'm just wondering, Dr. Cameron, before I hand back to you to conclude, would it, in terms of protocols, if we were to stay on, say, for 15 minutes, but it wouldn't be formal APPG, it would be APPG.
Stay on anyway. It's fine because sometimes MPs have to leave sessions early, so it's fine.
Right.
Continue the session entirely, and I think it's been excellent because it's not only, and I think that's sometimes what we do in the House of Commons. We focus so much on mental illness, because and mental health, mental illness. But I think today's discussion has been fantastic because it's also focused very much on well-being and building resilience and coping strategies and resources, so that people can, you know, develop really positive strategies to cope, because all our mental health is on a continuum. So thank you for having me in today's session. I was so pleased to be able to be here for such a long time. I'm sorry I've got another one at 4, but thank you to all the presenters and Jacqueline as ever for all of your work in putting this together. There's definitely going to be policy outcomes, so please keep a little list of the outcome of today's discussion after I leave, and we can take them forward. So thanks.
Thank you. And we will obviously, because the session is recorded, we'll discuss it in our updates anyway. But thank you so much. And so as Dr. Cameron leaves us, we will continue, because I think there are some really valid points, and to give people opportunities to ask questions if they wish to. And then I'll conclude with any other business and also dates of next meeting and things. So thank you so much, Dr. Cameron. Okay, so absolutely, in terms of all of the speakers, had some really positive feedback. So I just want to go through some of the messages that we've had. So bear with me. So what I might ask people to do is, if they wouldn't mind, if I actually highlight your comment, if you would like to actually say your comment to the group yourself. If not, fine, just don't unmute and I'll carry on to the next one. But I wondered if Faye would like to unmute, and Faye had a comment in terms of we need a DIID. Thank you, Faye.
Am I unmuted now?
You are, yes.
Oh, right. The deed was my late husband's technology, and it's a way to communicate all sorts of information. You sort of put me on the spot now.
Don't worry.
It's I don't know if people can see. I can show you a little bit. These are deeds, and they're held within what we call a deed wallet. And each deed is like a mini app, but it doesn't cost the same as having your own app. But this group could have an app. We've got some charities using it. As you can see, we've got here Cornwall Chamber of Commerce. We've got an artist, hotels, pubs, bands, all sorts of people. And what happens when we've even done one for the Earthshot Prize for David Attenborough and the Prince, not the Prince of Wales, the other one. It's the sun. We're using it for One World, One Voice, which is a project that my late husband started. And what happens is when you, I can't do this, when you tap on your deed, it takes you into all sorts of information, and you can collect donations, you can communicate, you can send people to social media, to your Twitter, to your LinkedIn, to your whatever. You can send them to other websites, you can communicate. It's got an application, a facility for push notifications. So anything you do is in real time. So if we were having, for instance, this meeting and you had to put it off for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you could literally go into your little studio thing, just put a note, everybody would get it immediately. So that's why I was suggesting it's just a way to communicate. It's not like a Facebook or a WhatsApp or whatever. It's a
thank you so much, Jane.
So,
yeah. a lot, an absolute I think a standing ovation in terms of your emphasis within the app, Emma, in terms of looking at right across, whether it's low budget, etc., and nutrition. So that the kind of overall aspect that you're taking when you're taking this forward. Somebody's made a comment around, and I'm going to echo this, and I'll explain why in a moment. Is it Lenora? You've talked about it's very important to consider that many disabilities are hidden, and it may not be obvious. For instance, MS, etc. Now, not everybody knows that I am also if you have to have a badge, a disabled entrepreneur. I have hidden and fluctuating conditions. I absolutely echo that. It's very interesting that now we're not traveling. It's very interesting when you used to be traveling prior to COVID, how different I would be treated if I had a mobility aid with me at times as to other times. So it absolutely, and you know, that there's so many dimensions to this, and that's what this is about, to have these conversations, to try to raise awareness about what the issues actually are.
Jacqueline, do you mind if I just also say, one of the comments was the accelerators don't look inclusive. I live with MS, that's the condition I live with. And if you walk into a room, you wouldn't know. So the room may be much more diverse than we actually know at any time. And one of the biggest challenges I find with the people that I work with is disclosure, just getting people to talk about it and for people to be aware and not feel stigmatized by their hidden, uncertain, fluctuating, variable, sometimes painful condition.
It's quite interesting actually, because what we actually, when we talk about this within the network, you know, some of the things that we're actually posed to us sometimes are around, you know, well, this is how business is. And what we're trying to do is to explain that actually we are doing business differently, and actually doing business differently, as we've seen in the pandemic, can actually benefit everybody. It becomes a much more inclusive way of doing business. So that's quite important. Thank you so much for that. We had a comment saying, I think it was Sharon, again around the hidden conditions. Sarah Louise said she loved the emphasis on realistic budgets and consideration of real people. Elaine Gold, who runs Gen UK, and I think we'll have Elaine on actually to talk a little bit more about this for future session, in terms of the community hub that they have, in terms of promoting your business and network through that as well. So I think what we'd like to do is probably have Elaine speak at one of our sessions about that. That'd be really interesting. Okay, so those are things that have come on the chat. Is there anybody now that would like to ask Emma or any of the other speakers a specific question? Now, I can't see you all, so how we navigate this is going to be interesting. So I'm hoping Sarah can identify people. So, Lady Sharon.
You can always identify me.
I know.
A couple of things. Emma, first of all, doing it, in the middle of doing it, downloading it. I have been waiting. I'll keep asking Jacqueline. I've been waiting for this app to come out, because, like Aaron was saying about great speech, Aaron, by the way, and David as well. But for me, I suffer with PTSD as well as other hidden, like Jacqueline, other hidden disabilities and what have you. And going to the gym for me is a no-no. I wouldn't have the confidence to do that. Hi, Aaron. So yeah, so thank you, Emma, for finally launching it. And yeah, good chat, Aaron, and David as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lady Sharon. Anybody like to either respond or any further questions? David, would you like to?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'll come back to you, Emma.
I was going to say, it's really helpful as well. I think that personally for me, the last year, there's going to be so many people as well who've developed more hidden disabilities than ever before. And I think that also they're going to have had some real big problems with the way that the press have described people, like that they're using it as an excuse not to wear masks and all these other things that have weaponized disabilities. So I think that it's really helpful for me to kind of look at how we're going to be able to help with decontaminating that fear narrative through APPGIE. And helping people find programs of support, because particularly for PTSD and CPTSD, it's really hard to get support on the NHS because obviously there are limited budgets and it's a really specialised area. So I'm hoping that the app in itself will obviously not solve anything on the bigger scale regarding that kind of one-to-one treatment that's required, but certainly lessen the burden. I think the app is there to be a collaborator, and if you have personal experiences, the other thing is I want people to feel that they can be experts in the world for themselves and their communities. I think people's stories are what change everything when we share them, so thanks for that.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating discussion, and it certainly opened my mind to quite a few things, but I just wanted to say that there are traditional business roles that can also help, which you shouldn't overlook if you are an entrepreneur. So, and these are chairman roles or non-executive director roles, and traditionally these roles have been designed to look after the interests of shareholders, you know, if you're raising capital and things like that. But actually over time, and certainly for me, my chairman was someone I could go and talk to about my issues and my challenges, and some of it was quite personal stuff, you know, and even where I was not confident, let's say, to do things, you know, if I had certain challenges going on in my head. Okay, so I think as a, you know, as a group of entrepreneurs, you should try and find, you know, a non-executive director sometimes, or a person that you could really open up to and trust. And the people are out there, and they've got a lot of experience, and they don't necessarily want any money or paid. Okay, and a lot of you know, what I call let's call them other businesses, that they're all out there, they're all looking for these types of people as well. Okay, and it's quite, as I say, it's quite normal to have them in your company structure, and then you're formalizing a relationship which can really help you, and becomes really important. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think on the flip side of that as well, and I don't know if Helen's available at the moment, but also for the sector as well to get engaged in that process and go on to provide some of that support themselves as well. So to become non-executive directors, etc., to get that level of experience as well, I think is really important going forward. And I know that quite a few of us have benefited from the Boardable programme that Pink Shoe Sabotage run, and that's been really interesting. And it's been interesting to see how inclusive that programme was as well. Okay, and Elaine's just put some, yes, I think Elaine's just responding. Elaine, do you want to just say that? Because it disappeared before I could read it.
Sure, I was just supporting David on the importance of, even for a very new startup, to have, even if it's a kind of informal advisory board, a team around you to just act in that way that David said. And your point, Jacqueline, about more people putting themselves forward in non-exec roles. It's a win-win situation, I think, for everyone on that.
Helen, I know I'm rather putting you on the spot because I think it was rather apt that did come up today. Do you want to talk a little bit briefly about Boardable?
Thank you, Jacqueline. My connection is unstable, so if I disappear or freeze, forgive me. Yes, I mean, I think this has been a great session with so much input across the spectrum of how entrepreneurship is actually naturally inclusive. And I'm glad that this group is really, I suppose, pushing forward on that. So specifically about non-exec directorship roles, we have a program called Boardable, which is really designed to facilitate inclusive access to boards. We started this to look at public sector appointments, but as an entrepreneur myself, I could see there was a whole raft of, I suppose, gaps really, where there's an opportunity there, but people were not putting themselves forward, perhaps because they felt they weren't qualified, or simply that they just didn't know about the vacancies. So Jacqueline, who is an alumna of the Boardable programme, along with others on the call, this is a programme that we run really to enable people to understand what is involved with a board position. We advise them perhaps to start small, doing something locally, such as school governor, but taking them right through to the different aspects of the difference really between running your own business or being a manager or a senior manager in an organisation, and then being a non-executive director or a public appointee. So we've increasingly had people who have experience as entrepreneurs, and we're finding that there's a lot of interest in the skills that they've got, because the flexibility, the creativity and the innovation of entrepreneurs is absolutely beneficial to any organisation. So from what David said, not just the side of joining an entrepreneurial business or something like that, but also really bringing those skills back. So it works both ways. So if anyone wants to find out more about Boardable, the online seminars that we run and the full programme that we run, I'd be delighted to share that information with you. And thank you, Jacqueline, for giving me the opportunity to mention it, and also for the inspiring conversation that we've had this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right, I think we will kind of conclude today. So what I'd like to do is thank our speakers today. It's wonderful to hear from David and Aaron and Emma. Emma unfortunately had another meeting to go to, so she's actually left us, but I will send her recorded thank yous. I mean, it is a really emotive issue as well. I think at the moment, being in lockdown, I think we are hearing definitely that this is more difficult for people this time. So I think it's timely that we have been having these discussions. You know, always when we have these panels, what do we want to come from this? And I suppose it's collating the shared experiences and helping us when we do have our meetings and recommendations to the MPs through Lisa and her kind of channels, if you will, that we do try to incorporate this in our programme going forward to make things better, to improve things. And when we're showcasing things that people are developing, we can't obviously endorse them, but it's really interesting to actually let people see what is out there and see what, you know, what maybe you can benefit from or the sector can benefit from. And I found that really interesting today. So thank you to everybody that's taken part today. Thank you for your questions and your time. And I again apologise for the background noise that's been going on today. I have to say I found that really challenging today, but anyway, thank you for bearing with me. So in terms of getting back to the formal part of the meeting, just to conclude that, so again, thank you so much for joining our afternoon tea with the APPG and the Health and Wellbeing panel. I think that went really well today. If you have any other business, please put it in the chat. I'll leave the channel open for 10 minutes after we close down formally today. And in terms of next meeting dates, have we got those, Sarah? Yeah, lovely, thank you. So again, just to try to keep people informed. So the next APPG formal meetings are the 9th of March at 2 p.m. Now, again, I apologise in advance. The nature of having MP peers involved is that the business of the house, etc., often overtakes things. So we did have to alter the time of our meeting today, and I can't promise you that we won't do that in the future. But at the moment, these are pretty firm. But as you've seen, anything can happen. So 9th of March, 2 p.m. And the theme for that one is Inclusive Entrepreneurship in Sport. Then we go to the 15th of June at 2 p.m. That will be a theme of supply chains and procurement, and that will also be our AGM. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, we're going to find the best way we can to keep lines of communication open and improve on that for people, because we need that to be as inclusive as possible as well. But what I will say in all of this, you know, we do business differently. We are all navigating the various barriers that we face, and we all do what we can when we can in the way that we can. And I think that's what makes this so wonderful. And usually we manage to get there. So we're going to leave you today with one of our entrepreneurs, James Holt's compositions. James, if you remember, is one of our entrepreneurs. He's a singer-songwriter. He does then tell people he's from the deaf community. He kind of like throws that in at the end for people. But this is a particularly, I think, a wonderful piece of music that he was commissioned to do to celebrate a piece of legislation this year. So we'll play that, and then I'd like to conclude by saying thank you so much for everybody, attending, and we'll see you all next time, all being well. You know where we are in the meantime. Please use the Twitter, the LinkedIn, etc. to communicate with us in between. And thank you all so much. Thanks, Sarah.
Captive mind, bound and surplus. No work, no chance, no sense of purpose. And all my woes met with indifference. Deprived so young has made it tougher. For heaven's sake, don't make me suffer. My heart is bursting from its cage. Give me a reason, let me give something back. Not the institute, let me contribute. Forget the things that I lack. A saving grace in a sea of silence has kept myself from this dependence that left a burden on my life. A pill of hope, an act of kindness. Forgive like to my ears. And all at once I tasted freedom. Give something back. Not the institute, let me contribute. Forget the thing that I my independence gave me life. My independence gave me life. My independence gave me life. My independence gave me life.
That was brilliant, James. Thank you. And a final thank you really to the team. Thank you so much, Noreen, Sarah, Cheska today, and anybody that's contributed to the session today. Thanks, everyone, and look forward to seeing you all next time. Bye.